so what we took that training, we looked at 97 city pairs around the US, and Dallas to Houston came up at number 1. We love Texas, but data drove us to Texas. We're a private company. Dallas to Houston was number 1 because there's 7 million people in each region on each end, projected to double, and it's flat and constructible in the middle. Not a lot of mountains, not a lot of rivers. The constructability and the topography is perfect. So Dallas to Houston is the place we're putting it. After that, of that 9 years, the first 4 years was a lot of preliminary engineering, preliminary environmental and ridership studies. The reason being, you didn't hear much about it, because we have to do things. With that data we were gathering, we had to raise money, we have to do development, and then 2, we actually have to pay for our regulatory process as a private company. So we had to make sure we were viable before we went out there and started putting out money. We're not only going out there to raise money and do development, but also doing the regulatory process. So you didn't hear much about it. I was hired in the 5th year when we actually started the development. We'd done the viability studies, and we were starting the development, and we were starting the regulatory. That's when you start seeing tracks on the map. Real estate agents get interested as you start seeing things out in the community, and so I was paid to talk about it. I really talk for a living. I worked many years, just briefly. I worked for came here after graduate school, worked for the county judge, Robert Eccles, before Emmett, the county judge. And after 9/11, we were a high-risk area, like Chicago, New York, and other places. So I was working on those issues for the county judge. Long story short, I got hired to do that at the Department of Homeland Security at the very beginning. So I worked for Secretary Ridge. I did U.S. Conference of Mayors, National Association of Counties, went from there to the Department of Justice, looked at policing agencies, went to, after the Bush administration ended, I went to a firm called Booz Allen Hamilton, and stayed there 5 years, and I was really ready to come home to Texas, and there was a train to sell. So Robert Eccles on the board, and he invited me back, so that was wonderful. And so I came back, that got me back home, and it was a wonderful forward-leaning project, and I got to come back home. So in this 5th year, we've done our viability, we've done our development. Let's see. There we go. So, no, I hit this other one. So tens of millions of dollars spent on this study that first 4 years. And what did we find out? Now, ridership. Here's about how do you sell enough tickets to support a train? That's unusual. Most public transportation, it's government funded. So originally, the first stat I got on these first studies, that there are 50,000 supercommuters that go between Houston and Dallas. A supercommuter is a person who takes that trip at least 3 times a week. You've already got that base. So we continue to update our studies. We still are updating ridership studies. We do that continually, trying to get them better and better and more refined. These are all investment grade studies that we will take to raise money for this train. The latest survey did a survey of 2,000 people. 80% of the people surveyed said they would consider riding the train. It saves you roughly 70 minutes faster than a car one way. And I'm sorry, 70 minutes faster than a train one way and 50 minutes faster than a car. 50 minutes faster than a airplane, and 70 minutes faster than a car. So about an average of one way, an hour one way. So now the number of trips, 16 million trips a year are being made between Houston and Dallas, and that is not trips going past Dallas or to the airport to go somewhere else. That is to Houston and Dallas. So that's where our riderships come from for this train. And that's what drives everything we do, from station location to location. We got here because of that reason, where our stations are, where do we pick up passengers, and where do we drop them off. So this is the actual train. It's going to go slow. This is the Shinkansen N700i. This will be the actually we'll be using the next version of this train. We will be updated on the technology. Our agreement is that the next series of trains we will get updated. This is by far the safest, most reliable train in the world. This train has been running in Japan for 54 years. It's carried over 10 billion people in that time and has never had a collision or a loss of life accident due to operations. Carries 400,000 passengers per day now and is within a minute of being on time every year. It's a tremendous piece of technology, and we're extremely excited that this is the technology we're bringing to connect these two cities. Yes,
I have a question for you, since I have ridden on the Shinkansen, and can tell you it's a great way to travel. However, when you are a Western person who lives in Japan, you learn that all the seats are lower to the ground. And so I'm hoping that when they build this for us, that they will take the Western physiology.
We have done that. We call them
Okay.
Texas size seats.
Okay.
So we have, and I'll talk about that. So anyway, safest train. Many things make it safe and reliable. It's not only it's elevated. We never. There's no grade crossings. You will never have a gate come down where you wait for our train. It's always above or below. 90% of the time, it's above. It's got 2 tracks, one going north, one going south. This train has 2 fronts on it. It stopped running, but it has 2 fronts on it. So it never runs at each other. 2 tracks made specifically for this train. We do not share track with anybody. And that glues those wheels to this track so it can go 205 miles an hour. I'll pull it back up. So tracks, fencing along the top, tracks made one way, all for the train, grade separated, and it also has positive train control. So if this train is ever going too fast or too slow, it can be shut down to the station. So there's many backups, and that all leads to safety and reliability. On the way the train is designed, let me see if I can pull this back up. I'm hoping we don't have this. I know what the trouble is now, though, so.
People don't usually lose their connection that fast.
There we go. It might be that video. Let me go to the next slide and see if that helps. Okay, so anyway, on the design, so yeah, this train is the widest train in the world. So what we did in Japan, this has 3 seats on one side and 2 on the other. We took a seat out and made them extra wide, and the aisles very wide. So, and it's phenomenal, and it's phenomenal not only for the comfort for each passenger, for ADA requirements, Americans with Disability Act. We can you can go into our station. If you think about a train station versus an airline, you're going to go into the station, you'll be right above it because there's only one gate. You go right above it. It's flat going in. Security is passive. We're regulated by the Transportation Security Administration and Homeland Security, but it's passive. So you'll have dogs and cameras and police officers, but you'll go right through. The train will be waiting for you because it's highly safe and highly reliable. So it's sitting there waiting for you. You go on. Extremely wide aisles. Every seat is companion dog capable, having it. Wheelchairs can sit in their own seat. They can have their own area if they need it. You can go up and down the aisle while it's moving. So all of those comfort things that are great for us are also good for ADA requirements. And so Wi-Fi all the way, very comfortable.
It's passive like the subway in New York, that was me.
Yeah, they're passive. Yes, ma'am. That's a good example. So trains have always been more passive than airlines. That could change, but that's the way it will be done, just like other trains. So anyway, you get on it. So now the service. Train will go a maximum of 205 miles an hour at different points on the trip. That'll get you from Dallas to Houston in 90 minutes with 1 stop in the middle. Take that stop out, you save about 8 or 9 minutes. So you're talking 82 minutes. 3 stations, 1 at the Northwest Mall in Houston. Now, Data drove our stations. That's where we picked up the most passengers. There was a lot of debate. Why aren't you downtown? Why aren't you here? And we went through all that. Really, the most passengers, this, as you probably know, the city's growing northwest. Have you seen that? And so the center of Houston is the Northwest Mall. It is not downtown. And so we picked out most of our passengers there. So we'll have 1 station there, 1 between College Station and Huntsville. The reason it's there, Data showed us there's enough passengers and people there to actually build a station. So you have College Station, Texas A&M, and Blinn, 90,000 students. And between that and Sam Houston State and Huntsville, we're about 25 minutes from each one of them on I-30 at Rones Prairie, and we will pick up enough passengers there to justify a station. We'll also, on each station, we buy 45 to 60 acres, and there'll be development around each station. And then finally in Dallas, we're in South Dallas in the Cedars area, just south of the Convention Center, and that's where you'll pick up DART and connect. And here, and actually here, you'll see we'll be connected with Metro and the Northwest Transit Center and the Bus Rapid Transit into the Uptown area. So that's kind of how we're all connected. During initial service, trains will leave every 30 minutes during peak times and every hour during non-peak times. That can be increased or decreased with demand.
Do you mind if I go Facebook Live on our private
No.
page, because I'm getting people that
No.
can't be here that want to be.
No, whatever you want to do is fine. Anything that's on a slider I say is public. So anyway, that'll be our service at first. Again, that will be increased and decreased with demand. Our trains will every 30 minutes to an hour. In Japan, they run every 4 minutes. So it's just a matter of how many. So this is what it'll look like. Many different pictures. Right here's a viaduct. Over 50% of it, a little over 50% will be on a viaduct. That is the preferred construction method as we go along the route. You talk about landowners. It gives you the maximum flexibility for cars. Again, we don't close roads, we go over them, but cars, farm equipment, animals, wild or domestic, whatever, can move, and you can actually see under it. So that's really our preferred method. So about 50% is that. The other 40+% will be on an earthen berm, like a highway. There will be, plantings and sound barriers we can add to that, but we will negotiate those openings all along the route with cities and counties and landowners, where we can do that with our engineers and our environmental study. We'll all go into that, where that goes, and that's all part of that study. Yes, ma'am.
So it'll be on the ground?
It's all above.
Above.
All above. So it's either on a viaduct or on an earthen berm. Every once in a while it'll go under. There's a couple of places where it dips down, but over 90% will look like that.
Okay.
It'll be always, but there are no road crossings, because you just don't stop that quickly when you're going fast. It's it's a practical matter. So, anyway, that's sort of what it'll look like. And we've tried to maximize this as much as we can on the body, because that is too far. So building the train, people say, well, when are you gonna start building the train? Well, we say we've been building the train for 9 years. All of this is part of that process, but we're building the train every day. When I started 5 years ago, there were about 5 employees. There are now 50 employees roughly. I'm giving you rough numbers, so it changes rapidly. They're growing rapidly, but about 50 permanent employees, about 250 people total working on this train every day. That's designers, contractors, and I'll talk about some of who those people are. So these are some of the companies that are working with us, and I'll talk in more detail about some of them. CLS Contract Land Staff is the firm that buys our property, and we'll talk about that. We will talk about land in detail. With this group particularly, I always do. There's our engineering companies, but all of these, Citi and Mitsubishi will be our financial advisors worldwide, and we'll talk about that as well. But these are all people already working on the firm, part of that 250 that we talk about working on the train every day. So let's talk about, so if you look at the biggest companies working on the train, and now we've had to draw worldwide. As we said, there is no high-speed train technology or business in this country, so we've really had to do a worldwide search. So Cellini is the Italian company. It is the design build lead, with Lane as their American division, and WSP Engineering is the actual engineering support. And they will build everything from the viaduct and the berm foundations and build everything from the ground up. And they're working on that design as we speak. Oh, let me go back. Well, let's do both of them. As we said, JR Central with Toshiba, Mitsubishi, they build the train and the technology, that wonderful technology. They develop it, and we will take advantage of everything. They update, new trains, new technology, they will all be part of the project. Renfe out of Spain is the operating partner. They are on early because we're having them help us design the train, but probably, most likely, they will be the people that actually run it in the long term, but they're our operating partner now and are on board helping us design the train so it operates in the best way possible for the customer. And then we're Texas Central. Now, Bechtel is also, they're our program manager, and it's an interesting relationship. You know Bechtel, they're pretty well known, very large. They're actually integrated into our staff. Our lead of project delivery is actually on our staff in our org chart. They are integrated into our staff, and the head of project delivery is Bechtel and Texas Central. So they're the ones leading the whole project on time delivery, on budget, on time delivery. Okay, good for Texas. So we talked about having a train and an alternative, and it's investor owned, but really talk about what it's going to mean for the economy and economic development. $12 billion investment in civil infrastructure, 10 million cubic yards of concrete, 1,100 miles of rail, I heard a rough estimate of 50,000 truckloads of aggregate just to build it. So it'll be one of the largest, if not the largest construction project in the state. We've seen in going on. So a lot of money. Above and beyond that is the cost of the trains and the technology. 10,000 jobs per year during construction. That's one of our biggest concerns, is with the unemployment rate being so low, which is wonderful. We're already got to search for workers. So we have 10,000 people we have to employ a year, but we also, so we'll have our current contractors will have some of that, but there'll be a gap, and we're working with the ISDs along the route and the community colleges to get those certificates we need, where it's electrician, welder, construction manager. We're already starting to work on that. What we really owe these people after we've met with them initially is what actually do we need and when do we need it? And that's what we're all trying to get out to these people so we can have enough workers to do this. About 1,500 jobs once operational, and then about 2 to 4 indirect jobs to support them in these communities as they run the train once it's built. Okay, super economy. We talk about a super region. So you think about, you built the train and now it's running. What are you connecting? So when you connect Dallas and Houston regions, and you have A&M and College Station and Glenn and Huntsville and Sam Houston State in the middle, you're connecting 42 Fortune 500 companies. You're connecting 83 Fortune 1000 companies. You're connecting well over 30 academic institutions, meaning medical centers and universities, and over 340,000 graduate and undergraduate students, and all those people that live there, not only fast but reliable. So what you start to create is this new regional economy. Dallas and Houston become a region. And you can imagine the dynamics as this state goes from 25 million, 35 million, 45 million people, what that's going to mean and the dynamic that will mean. Living in Houston and Dallas and College Station and Huntsville will all become just interchangeable at some point. And you think of the corridors in the world. If you look at the East Coast, when you look at DC and Boston and New York, that kind of corridor. And you can start to envision over time as our population grows, and what this does. The population's coming, we're just connecting. We're sitting at that. Tourism. So you think about when you invite people to Texas, they fly to a big city and it's too far to go anywhere. No longer in that will not be the case anymore. So maybe you'll see Houston and Dallas is the same. You'll start to see, well, I can go to Houston, but I Dallas and actually stop in the middle. So, and when we sell that, so people will come to ride the train. The first thing you'll see some tourism, just to ride it, it'll be the first in the U.S. But you'll also see we start selling Houston and Dallas and the whole region as a group to international conferences, sporting events, Olympics, whatever that is, we start to sell it as a unit. Not, Texas is no longer a series of just 3 big cities, or 4 big cities, or 5 big cities. We're really better connected. So all of that, the construction, the jobs, the tourism, the super economy, about a $36 billion impact over the next 25 years to the economy. 25% of those jobs that we create will be in the rural communities. And of the rural communities by the sides, we will also be providing first responder training and equipment all along the route. We have to do that as a safety issue. What's cool about it is those cities and those counties can use that equipment when they're not using it on us. Hopefully they never have to use it for us, but they actually have that equipment and training to use every day. And we will be providing that. So let's talk about regulatory. And we'll get into land and regulatory issues. So we're regulated primarily by the Federal Railroad Administration in coordination with TxDOT and many, many other agencies. The Federal Railroad Administration is our lead regulator. They regulate our operating safety rules. Because there is no high-speed rail in the U.S., that's a train going over 150 miles an hour, you gotta write the rules. We got a safe, reliable train, but they're gonna write the rules here that are comfortable in the U.S. and that make sense in our country. Route selection. Now, what you gotta remember is the Federal Railroad Administration draws our route. We have input, obviously a lot of input as a company. There's multiple meetings along the route where people do input. There's a lot of input into that plan, but they really draw our route. Now, let's talk, since this is all about land and that's really the big issue, let's talk about routes. So first of all of our routes, particularly the finalists, let's say, the ones that made it to the final route, there are multiple routes to begin with as they start to study them and wean them down. All of those really were to avoid impacting private property as much as we could. No one really likes to do that. It's hard for everybody. So really was trying to minimize that impact. One said, well, why don't you go down 45? That makes a lot of sense. Well, one, it's government-owned property, so there are complications there. The interesting part about 45, it's not quite as straight as you would think it is. And straight's very important when you're going 205 miles an hour. So as you start to straighten it out, well, it is. And flat's good too. Flat, remember, straight and flat, if you remember one thing. So as you start to straighten the line out, you're not only impacting more private property, but you're also getting into private property that was set aside environmentally to build 45. So it really got complicated. The other idea we thought that would be least impactful was follow the BNSF railroad. Follow it up to Dallas. If you're next to a freight rail, we're not going to be adding much. We go by in 4 seconds. It kind of sounds like a hairdryer. I mean, it's much quicker. There's no clickety-clack. Our trains are each powered individually. They all powered individually, and they go together, so they're not bumping each other or pulling each other. So it's just a much different, you've heard, I mean, there's noise, but it's just a much different, quicker experience. Problem with that is there's environmental issues, there's issues of compatibility of a freight rail next to a passenger rail, going that fast, all that, it got complicated. But that was also one of our finalists. Now, where we ended up, after all of this work, so after 4 years of study, 30 plus reports, 100,000 man hours, it was actually, I thought it was 5,600 pages, went through 19 federal agencies. This report, this EIS that's drawing our route, looks at bugs and bunnies and sound and vibration and neighborhood disruption and picks our best route, our least impactful route, and then it tells us what we have to do to make that work. So this went on for 4 years. We're in our 5th year. So we came out with a draft the year December before last, went out for public comment again. So all the previous public comments, all the new public comments are integrated and put in there all along the route. And then they give us a final, which we hope to get this year. And that really is our primary permit to build. We're waiting for the final. But this is the route that really, what we call our preferred route, because it is sort of the finalist right now. It could move with the comments out there, but this is the finalist. Now, so as I told you, it starts at, right there is the Northwest Mall. That straight line is 290. We follow Hempstead Road along 290. Right here is what we call the Hockley Curve in our business, and that is at Kickapoo Road. We start going north. Now that straight line is where we bump up next to a utility line. We're right up next to their right of way. We're not on it, but we're next to it. That's again that attempt to minimize our impact by being next to them. So this is what we call our utility corridor. It's what it ended up being, the finalist. And so then you see we meander on, we go next to 45 some, and we end up in Dallas, South Dallas, just south of the convention center. So let's wrap up property, and then there's one thing I want you to remember since you're real estate agents, and it's my elevator talk. So let's talk about property. So we talked about, all of our routes trying to minimize the impact on private property. Then we put as much as we could on viaduct, the preferred route, even when we put it on a berm. We're going over everything, but we try to work with those openings and animal crossings, and all that's part of our environmental impact. We also are buying land and paying very good prices for land. Unlike a government who buys land for projects, we are not limited to market or appraised value, so we're paying way above it to get it done. It's a big part of our project that's faster for us. So we're paying very good prices for the land. We're on viaducts, as I said. We're a taxpayer as we go through these counties. We'll be a large taxpayer going through many of these small counties, providing that equipment, training and equipment to very sometimes small departments. And so all of that we do. And so really trying to be as good a neighbor as we can. We're not going to please everybody, I can assure you, but we're going to try to do everything we can to be a good neighbor. And I can tell you, I fully empathize. If I particularly was in Grimes and Waller or Navarre, Ellis, and you're right outside of Dallas and Houston, it is probably something every day coming through. And y'all are real estate, you know that. There's always something. So we are really, really trying to be a good neighbor. But I want you to remember though, so we know the population is growing rapidly. I bet it's growing rapidly around here. That's a guess. So we know it's growing rapidly. We got to move people. The planes are going to take so many. They take of the 16 million now, they take about 1 million. But people are going to travel by road. 15 million people on the road. You can pick trains or cars in our case. The Annals of Regional Science did a study of interstate highways over time. Think of anyone you know. An interstate over its lifetime will displace 468 acres of land per mile. What happens with an interstate? You get more lanes, you get access roads, you get gas stations, you get subdivisions, and you get strip malls. Over and over and over again, all through, right down the, all the way. 288, 45, 35. Our train will displace 17 acres a mile and never come back for more land. We use an average of 150 feet of right of way, and we move millions and millions of people. Where we have a station, there's development, otherwise we go right through. And rural stays rural. So again, we're not going to please everybody, but we're saying if you're going to move 50 million Texans, if that's what that ends up being in 25, 35 years, depending on who you ask, you might can put them in all cars. You might try that. If you think we can add that many, if you can double what's out here as you're driving down the street, you might try that. But I think we're a great option if you think about your options of what we've got to do in this state to be responsible for our future. So these are people that have endorsed us. Endorsements are very important, particularly now. We have opposition, so obviously we want to show our elected officials and people around the community that we also have support. And so we have a lot of support, and these are some of the people that have put their names on the project, and that goes on. Now, if you want to continue to track what we're doing, you can text TRAIN to 52886, and you can they will kind of update you occasionally, or you can go, now, someone was taking a picture of our map. There's a wonderful map on our website at texascentral.com. You can go block to block to block. So as a real estate agent, if someone's concerned, probably if they haven't received a letter yet or heard from us, they're probably not going to be concerned. But if there's someone you know is concerned, or you're thinking about a piece of property, you can zone in to the block and know where our train will be. So this is really just one for us. But go to our Texas Central website. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. We keep people updated. So please do that. We love to talk to real estate agents because you're all over the community and you talk and you're out there. So it's really good for us. I know, and I say we do empathize as we know about land, because you can imagine when we had 9 or 10 routes sitting out there on maps, what that did to the real estate agent. I mean, that's just a nightmare, because you're having to disclose that. And so it's really, really hard. So we were cheer in our office every time we went down another route, and they continued to be narrowed. And so now we're down to one preferred route. So it makes it a lot easier on everybody. It gives you that knowledge of this is kind of what's going to happen. So anyway, that's what I have. And then please ask any questions. I'm glad to answer any questions beyond. Yes, ma'am.
I have many questions.
Sure.
Hopefully I can remember them all. The first one, I think the most recent thing that you mentioned was about the land, that you're paying premium prices for it. What if someone doesn't sell?
Okay, that's a good question. So the debate right now on land is around, everything we've bought so far is voluntarily. Now, the question is, do you have eminent domain authority? Now, our position as a company is yes, we do. We believe that from the day we've been with this project. The Texas Constitution, and by statute in the Transportation Code, gives private companies, certain private companies, eminent domain authority if someone refused to sell. Pipelines are private, Electric lines are private and rail is private. But these are private companies that have to gather land in a long contiguous strip. And if you want electricity, or if you want AT&T cable, or if you want freight rail, you're going to have it. Now, you have to be responsible. Like I said, we work very hard. We hope we never have to use it. We hope we're responsible enough and we can convince people that we're gonna be as good as we can and we never have to use it. It's usually the last 1%. It's a very small percentage as you go through the project. But that's what would come up if someone did not sell. We are not there yet, and there are lawsuits saying we don't have it, and that will work its way through the process.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Early on, you mentioned that this is going to be completely privately funded, but at one of the very first meetings that Texas Central had in the Cypress area, one of the representatives, whose name I don't have on me, but I have the card at home, told a colleague in the real estate business that they ultimately will wind up getting taxpayer funding.
Well, I'm glad to answer that. Now, let me say this, let me make it clear about taxpayer funding. One, the only thing we will take from taxpayers are loans that are set up by the federal government for transportation projects to develop transportation, you pay them back. So yes, we will take those we have not made that final decision, but we are certainly open to the idea. If there are loans out there we can take and pay back, we will. We will take no subsidies. Now, talking about as a state of Texas citizen, one of the things, we'll talk about the legislative session. So, most of our opposition will come during a legislative session. We're about to end another one. This is our third legislative session to be through. We ask for nothing. We want no money. We just want to build our train. Last session, we had 28 bills focused on our project. This is where it becomes relevant. 28 bills focused on our project, not this session, but last session. 26 died in process. There's many ways that happens in Austin. 2 passed. 1 said, you cannot take state money to operate, develop, build, bail out this train. We were neutral, fine, it passed, and the governor signed it. We cannot take state money to build this train. It is illegal. Second one said, you're gonna have to work with law enforcement all along the route for safety. Well, we were doing that anyway. So we were neutral on both bills. They passed, we went around. So that, on the state money side, we could take federal loans, but that is just off the table. And it will be investment dollars. Now what we do see, let's say we're wrong. Let's say we do all these investment grade studies, and what I tell people about the financing when they think about it is you as a person, we can't take state money, that's not gonna happen. These loans, right now we have 2 phases of funding. One is I'll just give general, hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's individual investors in loans. And what that does is that gets us through the regulatory process, certain purchasing of the land, and design. And when we get there, we take that and we send it internationally and say, we got a train project now, we wanna build and we wanna raise billions and billions of dollars worldwide. I will assure you that the people, if we're talking about our numbers and ridership numbers and all the things people say that they're not true, they will scrub those numbers very clearly before they write us a big check. So as an individual, we will be tested at the highest levels of financing to make sure that our numbers work, that our train will work. Now, let's say that happens, they're wrong. We raise this money, we do these 9, 10 years of studies, and we get out there and we raise the money. And let's just say they're wrong. I don't think they're wrong, but let's say they're wrong. You have a train going with 16 million trips a year between Houston and Dallas. At a price, someone will make money. You ever had people redevelop projects before or buy them out after they've developed the first time? We just have no doubt that we are right. But with the amount of traffic and growth, in fact, one of our international rail experts came down to testify in Austin. He goes, it's except for probably the train route corridor in Japan where this train runs now, and the east coast of the United States, it's one of the best routes in the world for a high-speed rail. So again, think of it in terms of the logic of what would happen if not only, and again, what you also have to think about is, either we get all the money, but we don't have to build the train. It's not like this California project where you hear they get a little bit and they build it and get a little bit built. We either build or we don't build. People don't invest in a half-built train. Neither invest in a whole train.
It'll be above 290, right?
Well, it's decided, but
It'll be
it'll be higher. Yeah, well,
Okay.
depending on where you are, I don't want to give a general answer. It's gonna gradate between, depending on how, I'm not the engineer, I can get you that, but
How much higher, you don't?
I don't know.
have to know.
It'll vary where it goes. There's certain ways we're going over roads and different engineering things.
And it's gonna come through every 30 minutes, you said?
Every 30 minutes, it'll leave Dallas and Houston every 30 minutes.
In
during
peak times,
and
yeah.
every hour during non-peak times at the beginning of the service. And you get some more questions.
Well, let her go.
Oh, I was kind of like what Gayla was asking. So it's gonna go along, the Hempstead Highway, which is by 290. Is that, because there's a railroad there right now, is it gonna be kind of
beside it.
Yeah,
It'll
parallel
be
to
beside
that?
it, yeah, we will
Okay.
not be on their right of way, we will be,
Yeah.
we're working with them now, but yeah,
Okay.
that railroad exists, the highway's still there, we'll just use the remaining.
On that side of it.
And there's a lot of things that wanna go through there, so there's a lot of people working on it now to make sure we all work together. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned, or on the screen, it said that this would be America's first high-speed rail. Isn't it not true that there was one started in California at one point?
Yeah.
And
The
what happened to
The
that?
California project is a very different project. California is a public project. If you think about it, for instance, you remember when I told you you would never put high-speed rail if you want to sell tickets on a long distance? It was going from San Francisco to Los Angeles, it's too far. Now, you can do that if you have public funding. I have no problem. If you want to publicly fund a train, and we love it, if you want to connect to our tracks, that's okay. But it was a publicly funded project. One of the things, they were going from Fresno to Bakersfield. That was one of the segments, because I think one of the goals of the public train was to connect the rural with the urban. We don't do that. We didn't even go to downtown Houston because our numbers wouldn't work out. Just a very different. Ours was data driven. We got the best train in the world, and data drove us to where we are. It picked our stations. It picked where we were going to be in the world. It picks our route. Data drives what we do. In a public project, you have other goals, and that's perfectly legitimate. Metro, internally, the city may want to connect the convention center to the airport. It's just a different type of goal. The California train that is now there, I guess it's going to be a leaf part of it. That's what I understand. The part that went under, they were building segments, waiting for more money, but as I told you, we can't do that. And the tunneling alone in the California project was gonna cost more than our entire project. They were going through mountains, which we're not doing because why? Because we're in Texas. So ours is a very Texas free market oriented project. That is a government project. Again, I'm not complaining about that project. It's just a different one and a different way they're doing it.
Go ahead, Linda. You have a question? Oh, I thought I saw your hand. Okay, still me. Private property. Sorry, I should have asked this earlier, but for people whose land is not needing to be acquired for this, so you're not needing to purchase land for them because you're not actually touching it. What about those people who are, losing the peaceful enjoyment of their property because this thing is going to be, right there in sight,
They're
and
not
the
close
noise
enough to
and
be-
all
yeah.
of that thing?
Yeah.
Well, close enough for it to be impactful.
Impactful, but not on their actual
Yes.
property. Now, I don't know, there are certain rules, and I don't buy it, and when we start talking about individual property, I can't speak to it because I don't do it for a living. Yeah, there will be people impacted that will not do that, and it does something. What we've found over time in general is at first, it's impactful, then people get used to the idea and they move, and things kind of start to settle down and then start to go back up. So as far as values and things, that does happen. There's this initial fear, then values kind of move around and over time. But I really can't speak to each property. That will happen. There will be cases of that where people that, and so we have to do our best to be a good neighbor and put sound walls and plantings and things we can do to alleviate the best we can. But there will be cases of that.
But for the most part, where it's coming from the Hempstead Highway area, that whole area already has the freight train.
Yeah, I actually live on that corridor. It's going to be in my backyard, and I don't see the train and I don't see the highway. This is going to be what I'm told about 60 feet above that, right in my backyard, like 100 yards from my back door or something like that. So just far enough that they don't have to buy my property, but close enough where it's gonna hurt.
Yeah. And this corridor, you're right. Along Hempstead, a lot of it's industrial. A lot of there's trains already going through the area. There are houses that will be impacted.
And then the fare. What's the fare?
Fare is going to be, and I try not to evade your questions any more than I have to, but fare is kind of interesting. We will be priced like an airline. So variable rate based on demand. So if you're a last minute business traveler, you pay more. If you're a frequent traveler and have a little card, you pay less. If we have empty seats and we're running every 30 minutes to an hour that we got to fill, we'll fill them with cheaper prices. And that's kind of what the airlines do. You'll see that kind of like Southwest does their tickets. Everyone kind of pays them. So what that price will be competitive with airlines and cars in the future. What that is in 5 years, it's hard for me to predict. But we will have to be, we will have competition, and it will be cars and airlines.
How long is this gonna take to finish?
So once construction starts, which we hope is next year, it's a 5 to 6 year build. So 2025 roughly. I'm just giving them, yes, sir.
I'm probably way ahead, but do you have plans to do other rails to other places, San Antonio, Austin, or even outside of the state from Dallas to Atlanta?
Yeah, I said I'm too tired, I don't even want to think about it. No, what we think will happen is when we prove concept and build, there will be a demand. I think that's what everyone bets on. And because we picked a sweet spot in the US, probably one of the best corridors in the world, but there are other good ones.
Yeah,
Austin to Houston, Austin to San Antonio, Austin to San Antonio to Houston, Austin to San Antonio to Dallas. easily could be good, they're good corridors. Someone may build those, they should be public-private partnerships, they could be built government projects. All you have to do is really link platforms. So we think once we build, it may not be us, probably not us, we've got our hands full, we're focused on this, but certainly people talk about them a lot.
Yeah, I just say, cause I lived in the Northeast, and as far as I'm concerned, you can't bring them fast enough down here.
Yeah.
Because it's fantastic.
No, I agree. But like I said, we think once concept is proven, and there's this idea that there'll be a national high-speed rail system, we've never really seen it that way. We'll build ours like it makes sense. Some people, again, may do a government project, some people may do a public-private project, and all you gotta do is we'll link platforms. We could build to Dallas, someone might build from Dallas to New Orleans, and then we link and we put our passengers on, so it works for everybody.
How many trains are there gonna actually be?
So we will buy, I don't know, running at one time, we will buy, I think initially 15 train sets, and then they'll run, and there'll be some in, being cleaned and operated, and, repaired and things like that, there'll be
Sounds like a
maintenance.
kid, like, we're gonna buy train sets?
Very expensive train sets, but yeah, so 15 at first, and then.
So is that 30 trains, if it's 15?
Well, what it was, when I say leaving every 30 minutes, so you'll leave every 30 minutes from Dallas and Houston at the same time.
How
Yeah,
many
they're
will
running
one
separate.
trip hold?
400 people per train. And the way it's built, the stations are built for this size train, so if we ever expand, we just run more trains, we don't get a longer train. We run more. Yes, ma'am.
How many tracks did you say there'd be?
2 tracks, there's one north and one south. And so the trains have 2 fronts on them, and so they just. like this.
So
move
how
over and let
so
them
how
go.
can you have more than 2 running at a time?
They'll run them periodically, they run every 4 minutes in Japan, one takes off, one waits, the other one takes off, and then it ends, turns around and comes back. They can run more than 2. There's places at each end of the track to obviously move around and get back on the track, but they don't come at each, trains do not move at each other for safety reasons. Anybody else?
You got, pictures of what an interior of one looks like
No,
on
that's a
site?
good point. I do not, I wish I did, I will get that, that's
Yeah.
a good idea, because I talk about it, but yeah, it's really,
That would be a good addition to your website.
360-degree view, please.
Yeah. We have a great video, I don't know, we show up.
He said free Wi-Fi, so.
Yeah, we have a great video we show of kind of the experience, just what you think about, people talk about speed, but you talk about reliability. And, what that does is everything can be reserved early, because you don't have to wait to get off the plane to know when you're gonna be there to get your Uber, so you do it all at the beginning. From the minute you leave one point to the other, it's all in line, and you know you're gonna be there on time, so it's much easier to make everything on your phone as you walk through.
And I imagine this will cut down on wrecks that are happening because you're in a hurry to get to Dallas or whatever.
We hope so. The environmental impact statement says we take over about 14,500 cars a day on I-45.
Oh, wow.
Now, there'll be plenty of people though. There'll be cars and planes.
Well,
There'll be
and-
plenty of.
As realtors, we're charged with protecting the public, their real estate, and so that's my only concern is
Yes,
the impact that we're gonna have on consumers, and so I'm still kind of on the fence of how I feel about it, because my real estate broker brain says I'm supposed to protect that, their properties. I
Yeah.
see the good, but I see the bad.
Yeah, it is one of those things, and it is, like I said, we know, I mean, it's not like we don't know, no, I mean, we're building a train, and we wanna build a weak train, and we think it's good for Texas, we think it's absolutely needed.
I
But
see
we-
it, I
and
see
we
what you're
understand
saying.
that, and we understand that, like I said, you talk about Grimes and Waller, or Ellis and Navarra, and the number of people moving in, and it is something, it's not just us, it's pipelines and electric lines and everything. And it's just the state of development, so how do we do that most efficiently, and make sure we do it in the least impactful way? And how do we move all these people we have, because we're gonna continue to grow, and as long as we grow, we've gotta deal with it.
True.
And there is a lot of, now again, you think about the development that will raise values around each station, as you get to a